Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. So other stuff goes on in late night. Sometimes an episode of late night television is just an episode of late night television. The late night guys had fun with the president's adventures on the escalator the other day at the UN. Did you see that? The president stepped on an escalator and it immediately stopped. And some people are saying there's a big conspiracy. Jordan Klepper said, "Are we going all in on the president being a victim of escalator sabotage because the deep state wants him to get his steps in?" That's a great joke. Jimmy Kimmel said, "So to recap, Trump will not release the Epstein files, but we will be doing a thorough investigation into who stopped his escalator." Jimmy Fallon said the White House is now looking into who would have a grudge against Trump, and so far they've narrowed it down to 189 countries. You can rip Fallon, but sometimes the stuff's really good. Fallon again, I mean, the whole thing was a headache for Trump, but even worse, he couldn't take any Tylenol. Well done, Jimmy Fallon, for the win. Speaking of Jimmy Fallon for the win, guess who is going to be on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon on October 6th? Taylor Swift. Very exciting. Late night heating up. That will do quite the number. It's been a busy week. I didn't get to tell you about Louis C.K. appearing on Theo Vaughn's podcast. Theo Vaughn, apparently not the best interviewer in the world. Theo Vaughn said, you had this is when things have gotten kind of crazy in your career with accusations and all types of stuff and accurate accusations. Yeah, they're accurate. He admitted it. Even Louis C.K. laughed at that question and said, accurate accusations. You may recall in 2017, Louis C.K. admitted multiple sexual misconduct allegations against him were true. C.K. admitted he had done some self-happiness in front of women. Many of the women were in a disadvantaged power situation with C.K., who admitted at the time, the power I had over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. C.K. told Theo Vaughn he felt free when it came to light. I haven't been able to listen to Theo's podcast yet. It's been super busy with the Kimmel stuff. Louis C.K. explained, when life's set up for you, when it gets torn up, it's relief. That's why I felt free, because I'd tried to manage these problems I had inside me for so many years. You're trying to piece together that broken mirror and cutting your fingers. That's beautiful. It's true. And when life's set up for you, when it gets torn up, it's relief. That's why I felt free, because I tried to manage these problems I had inside of me for so many years, and I tried to feel like I was a normal person. I thought I was a good person, but I was doing stuff in the background of my life that I was ashamed of. I was hurting other people and trying to tell myself I wasn't. Those things on the edge, like using another person, but you got their permission first. You're still using another person. You're not being with them. You're using them. That took me a long time to learn about that stuff, but you're doing that stuff and creating more and more problems. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. And then the worst thing is, if you're having a good life that's successful because you're feeling this incredible rift between the way you're representing yourself and who you really are, and it's getting really, and I used to try, I think some of the early versions of talking on stage, really honestly, were me trying to get out and say I'm corrupt. I want everyone to know it, right? I'm a corrupt file. All that, you can't manage it. And so when you're in front of the world and that's going inside of you, it's like hell. I look at that as God's hands or whatever you want to call it. That was just a good caring thing that said, dude, you need to stop. You need out of all this. CK explains how sharing his story in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous has helped other people. CK said, when I go at a meeting in person, there's a guy who's really hurting. His life's effed up and I approach him and he's not sure about being in the program. And he goes, oh, I ruined my life. And I go, do you know who I am? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I'm doing pretty good, buddy. The fact that my wreckage could be a mountain for folks to lean on, take a little load off, that's a beautiful gift. So that's a must listen, right? That's on this past weekend with Theo Vaughn. And if you want to go see Louis C.K., he'll be performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival alongside many of your other favorite comedians. Bill Burr opened up the Riyadh Comedy Festival last night. Dave Chappelle's going to be there. A lot of people are going to be there. The Telegraph wrote about the Riyadh Comedy Festival, and they wrote, much about the festival will be surreal. Many of the comics have made a virtue of saying the unsayable. Jimmy Carr has described himself as a free speech absolutist, while Dave Chappelle once said comedians have a responsibility to speak recklessly. The Telegraph says even the setting is odd. It takes place in Riyadh's Boulevard City Entertainment District, a soulless ersatz version of New York, with a Times Square-inspired piazza given the creative name of Square. The Telegraph points out, despite their public boasting of being willing to say the unsayable, the highest-profile comics on the bill appear uncharacteristically reluctant to publicize the fact that they're taking the Saudi money. Let me go to BillBurr.com. I'm actually recording this prior to Bill's appearance. I'm on BillBurr.com. Let's see. We've got a nice picture of Bill Burr playing, looks like Fenway. Yeah, it's definitely Fenway Park here. We've got a little embedded version of his podcast. Let's see on the bottom here, tour dates. Let me click on the tour dates. Well, to be fair to Bill Burr, he's got 2 dates listed. One of them is the Riyadh Comedy Festival, so Bill Burr's not hiding it. Just trying to be fair here. The Telegraph says neither Jimmy Carr nor Jack Whitehall have mentioned that they're going to be in the Middle East on their touring websites or social media accounts. Let me go to Jimmy Carr's website. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Carr. Jimmy Carr official website. So there's a pull-down menu for Laughs Funny Tour, and it has 4 things I could click on. Australia and New Zealand, well, Riyadh's not there. USA, Riyadh's not there. UK and Ireland, Riyadh's not there. And Europe, Riyadh's not there. Which of these would he have his date in? I guess Europe would be the closest. Let me click on that. Jimmy's got some dates in June of 2026 listed. So, yeah, I mean, maybe Jimmy thinks it's a little far and his fans won't be able to make it all the way to Riyadh. Who knows? Here's a section called Deep Dive, some sort of blog. This is the Carr Tell, CARR-Tell, telling you everything about Jimmy Carr. Let's see. The posts here are the Fackham Hall release date, Penguin Obsession, Woolley, Florida, Michael Malice 2025, When Heckles Backfire. Nope, I'm not seeing it. Anyway, I digress. The Telegraph say some comics on the B list and below have been more forthcoming. Pete Davidson told Theo Vaughn this week, I missed this. I'm learning this as you're learning this. Pete Davidson told Theo Vaughn this week he had been getting a little bit of flack for performing in Riyadh just because my father died on 9/11. Pete explained, I get the routing and I see the number, meaning the fee, and I go, I'll go. All right, if Pete's okay with it, I'm okay with it. Shane Gillis said he turned down a significant fee. Shane's logic is you don't 9/11 your friends. Jim Jeffries telling Theo Vaughn last month, now people have been going, oh, how dare you go over there after they killed a reporter. That was the big one. There's been a reporter who they killed. You don't think our governments bump people? Oh, I think Jeffrey Epstein was bumped off. The Telegraph says, although the comics who have been willing to talk about going to Saudi have been coy about whether their material will be vetted, there are signs that the Saudi regime does not want its paid-for comics to dive too far into controversial topics. Tim Dillon being disinvited being a possible example of that. A Middle East expert spoke to the Times of London and said, I don't think the Saudis will explicitly tell the comedians what not to joke about, but they would assume they have the sense not to make fun of God or the monarch or say something very sexually explicit. The expert says, at worst, I think you can accuse some of the comedians of hypocrisy. They criticize should their freedom of speech be curtailed in their eyes while taking money from a regime that curtails freedom of speech for both its population and those visiting. Dustin Rolls for Pajiba writes, when Shane Gillis takes the high road over Bill Burr, ... Dustin says, I'm not sure why I direct most of my ire at Bill Burr, who opened the festival on Friday night, over the other comedians attending the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which include Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle, Jeff Ross, Bobby Lee, Chris Tucker, Tom Segura, Jessica Curson, Hannibal Buress, Aziz Ansari, Pete Davidson, and Whitney Cummings, and some others. Skipping ahead, I think that choosing to accept a huge paycheck to help whitewash the Saudi royal family feels more antithetical to Bill Burr's ethos. Here's a guy who regularly blasts the hypocrisy of both sides of the political spectrum, but apparently doesn't hesitate to take money from a country responsible for egregious human rights violations. For a festival that starts this weekend, there's been surprisingly little coverage, which is probably how these comedians prefer it. Final night of JFL Toronto, Just for Laughs Toronto, the Toronto Comedy Festival. So after tonight, if we want to see our favorite comedians, we might have to go to Riyadh. But tonight we can just go to Toronto. Ian Fidance is at 7 o'clock. Fabrizio Capano, also at 7. That show is in Spanish. Maria Bamford in English at the Bluma Appel Theater at 7. Pat Thornton is at the Comedy Bar Cabaret at 8:30. And I see his headshot. He's wearing headphones, not even AirPods, but actual headphones. Gina Yashere at 9 o'clock. You remember she was in the news recently. The Standard, a British newspaper, had published on 16 September. They wrote, Gina Yashere said that the conservative activist, Charlie Kirk, who was fatally shot in the neck while speaking at Utah Valley University, quote, got what he had advocated for because he opposed gun controls. Gina Yashere's show tonight is sold out. Most of the shows I've spoken about, I've only seen 1 or 2 full-on sold outs. But Gina Yashere at the Bloor Comedy Bar tonight at 9 p.m. is sold out. And then at 10 o'clock, Pat Thornton, whose headshot shows him still wearing headphones, and that is the Toronto Comedy Festival. Adam Palley will debut his first ever comedy special, An Intimate Evening with Adam Palley, HBO, 9 o'clock Friday, October 17th. Right, I'm learning here. So the Friday night HBO slot seems where the Caleb Herons and the Adam Palleys go, and is not the prestige traditional Saturday 10 p.m. slot that, say, a Mark Maron would get. So we'll see if this is akin to a YouTube special, which is how I felt about Caleb's, or what this is. Anyway, in the special, which is said to be equal parts stand-up, documentary, and rock concert. Adam Palley plays with the truth and his guitar in a one-time only performance. Palley said the special was made out of a deep desire to make something, anything at all, and I couldn't be prouder of it and grateful to HBO for giving me an incredible platform to make people laugh, play music, and tell some Bubba Meisters. And the show was super serious in the first half, so let's do something goofy. Speaking of goofy, Realtor.com took a look at Adam Sandler, and they say Adam Sandler has turned his goofy personality and extremely great dramatic acting into an estimated $440 million fortune, says the guy recording a podcast in his basement. Realtor.com must have typed Adam Sandler into the AI, which spit out a biography of sorts. We learned of at least some of Sandler's holdings. In 2001, Adam Sandler bought a $3.1 million, 3,000 square foot home in Malibu, built in 1947. It boasts 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and an enclosed deck that fits up to 100 guests. That's a big deck. 100 guests? There are also 25-foot glass walls that offer panoramic views of the ocean. So if I were Adam Sandler, I'd be making Happy Gilmore 3. But in 2022... the Sandlers bought another Pacific Palisades home, this one for $4.8 million, Realtor.com tells us. That one, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It's on a cul-de-sac. It's a ranch with wood shingles, blue shutters, and crown molding. Sounds nice, but I'd hang out at the Malibu place, wouldn't you? Yeah, anyway. That's your comedy news on a Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. Back in the morning, or you never know when a bonus episode breaks out, but I don't have any plans to do one. You never know. See you tomorrow, I guess.